Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, it seems that technology is working. I do apologise for the delay. We are live. So, good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Jeff Payne. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight to Council's Planning and Consultation meeting. I want to advise the meeting will be live streamed and recorded. The live stream and video recording will be made publicly available via YouTube and on Council's website. I must apologise for the late start. We've had a lot of technical issues tonight because tonight's first off for Nillumbik Council. One of our councillors, Councillor Duffy, is currently not able to attend council meetings in person due to health reasons. She's undergoing chemotherapy and she cannot compromise her treatment, and nor should we. So while virtual meetings have been conducted for the past 18 months, a hybrid system, such as the one we're using tonight, is a much more complex technical upgrade. We have got legal advice that we can, in fact, conduct a hybrid meeting so long as we can see and hear Councillor Duffy. I'm going to ask her to raise her hand right now. So yes, there she is. She's on the screen. And I'm pleased to say, as a result of the legal advice, Councillor Duffy is joining tonight's meeting electronically as a full councillor participant. Viewers at home will not be able to see Councillor Duffy. You will be able to hear her. And I, as chairperson of the meeting, can see and hear Councillor Duffy, and in accordance with the legal advice we've received, this satisfies our legal obligations. I'd like to move on to acknowledgement of country. Nillumbik Shire Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, who are the traditional custodians of this land, and we'd like to pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other First Nations people present. Thankfully, we have no apologies. We have all councillors present, so I'm going to move on to confirmation of minutes. I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes, please. Do I have a mover? Okay, Councillor Eyre, thank you. And a seconder, I think, for that one. Thank you. Councillor Mayor Perkins. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All in favour? All in favour of voting for the minutes? Councillor Duffy? Yes, it is unanimous and carried. Thank you. I now move on to disclosure of conflicts of interest. Are there any councillors who wish to disclose a conflict of interest? And that is none. And so we move on to officers' reports, and the next report tonight, and our one and only report tonight, is PCC. It is 016-21, the Nillumbik Planning Scheme Amendment, C131, Earthworks in the Green Wedge. And we have a speaker tonight for this report. I'm looking for Douglas Seymour on behalf of the Warrandyte Community Association in the room. Here he is. Douglas, I'm going to ask you to take a seat right in the middle there. And you may remove your mask when you're presenting. And you should find a little button. The button on the speaker button should turn green. You are on.
I'm on.
You have 3 minutes.
Evening, councillors and everyone here. My concern with this amendment is one of support, but from experience within the family and professionally, because I am an engineer by profession and also hold a postgraduate diploma in land rehabilitation. Our concern is that many of the soils in our region are what are called sodic soils, which are dispersive in nature. Sodic soils are characterised by a higher percentage of sodium, exchangeable sodium in soil, which under wet conditions allows clay to be separated out and to disperse. We live in a region where there are many soil types that have high exchangeable sodium. Now I'd like to refer you to the map that I have circulated here. This is the geological map from Department of Environment, and I've laid over it a simple green line which outlines the northern development corridor of Melbourne, just to our west. Within this zone, we have 3 soil types, all of them volcanic origin, that generally speaking have high exchangeable sodium. And I was concerned in looking at the images and videos relating to Chapel Lane that I suspected a lot of this material was coming from the real estate development being undertaken in this region, Donnybrook, South Morang, Beveridge, and now towards Wallen. I consulted with my brother, who's a soil quality chemist and water chemist, and he said, yes, it's very likely. In other words, when you box out the roads within an estate and the driveways, what are you going to do with the excess soil? It's very expensive to haul it all the way to Bulla, right over there past the airport. So we suspect a lot of this material is coming into Chapel Lane. Very lucrative business, but really not the sort of material that we should be welcoming as a fill within our Green Wedge area. There is a very simple test that can be undertaken to determine the exchangeable sodium percentage within a soil sample. And generally speaking, if it exceeds 6% of exchangeable cations, it's going to be dispersive. Now, within our region here on the geological map...
Douglas, we're sort of at the end of the 3 minutes. I don't want to rush you, but we are going to have to wind up soon, if that's okay.
Yep. I would draw your attention to the circled 3 knowns on the legend that will become dispersive if the Shire allows it to be dumped. I believe that looking at my earlier submission, that you could possibly delete number 1, recommendation, and you could possibly concentrate on just the sodium exchange test.
Thank you.
As a way of sorting this out.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry to cut you off at that point, but thank you for that submission. At this point, I am going to ask if there are any councillors that would like to ask questions of Douglas. Yes, Councillor Ramduran.
Thanks, Doug. It's a shame you didn't have more time because it's really fascinating stuff to learn about all the soils we've got. Look, so you're telling us that we've got dispersive soils coming from certain areas of Nillumbik and being taken to places where there are not usually dispersive soils? Is that what you're telling us? Right. And could you sum up just quickly what the problem is, what that causes for the environment, what the real issues are that come out of that?
If sodic soils are placed in fill, as soon as the water hits it, it begins to break down. It not only increases erosion, it also increases salinity, and it's a very poor medium for vegetation growth. It really is quite a problem. So if they have been experiencing downstream water quality issues and difficult revegetation, it's very likely the use. I would suspect that's probably a problem they're already experiencing. There are other areas to our east that are also high sodic soils. DIH is the grey area on the map.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Any other councillors that would like to speak to Douglas? Ask any questions? No, in that case, Douglas, I thank you for your submission.
Thank you for letting me attend.
Is that Councillor Duffy? Did you have a question? Yes, we do. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Doug, thank you for your submission. I'm sorry I can't be there in person tonight. Doug, from your, just to further elaborate on the question that was just posed to you about the environmental impacts here, a lot of what we're hearing is that some of the reasons for why this fill should be taken into the Green Wedge is to help with agricultural purposes. So based on what I'm hearing from you, I think it sounds like you would disagree with that. So I'm wondering, would you disagree with that? Would you like to elaborate a bit more on what the damage is that you think happens when this sort of construction type fill is used in a Green Wedge area?
I did hear that at the time, Councillor, that the company running the fill operation was claiming that it helped to improve landforms and drainage. My underlying concern is that if the material they are dumping is in fact dispersive, it would not improve the agricultural value of the soil. In fact, it would degenerate it. That's my concern. And just laying a little layer of topsoil over the top won't do any good at all. It won't be a good stable surface in the sustainable long term. Is that an adequate answer, Councillor?
Yes, you've answered that very well for me. Thank you, Doug.
Pleasure.
Any other questions from any other councillors? In that case, again, I thank Doug for his submission. Thank you. At this stage, I am going to ask for a mover for the recommendation, and I have it from Councillor Ramcharan.
Yes, I'd like to move that the committee, acting under delegation from Council, 1. Notes the submissions to Amendment C131 to the Nillumbik Planning Scheme. 2. Considers a further report at the July Council meeting to resolve to either request the Minister for Planning appoint an independent planning panel to consider Amendment C31 pursuant to 23(1)(b) of the Planning Environment Act 1987 or abandon the amendment. 3. Requests that officers notify submissions to the proposed Amendment C131 of the committee's resolution. And 4. Requests that officers provide an update on Participate Nillumbik in regard to next stages for Amendment C131.
Thank you, Councillor Ramcharan. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stockman, thank you very much. Councillor Ramcharan, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, look, I'm really pleased to see this progressing. We've had an overwhelming amount of support within the submissions. There were some objections made, and hopefully the planning panel process, if that's the process that we choose to go down, will help to work through them and progress this further. We've seen recently what's happened on Chapel Lane, and that's really been the trigger for us to do this. And we are really sorry to everybody who's been impacted by dumping activity within our green wedge areas, not just on Chapel Lane, but there are plenty of other places. And I think most of us as councillors would have heard from some residents, or at least 1 or 2 residents in the time we've been on council, about dumping activities that are happening right next door to them and the impact that has on them. So having this control in place will just give us that extra clarity and that extra trigger to really make sure that if any soil is going to be brought into the area, that it's being done for the right reason and under the right controls. So that's what this amendment is about. And yeah, really looking forward to seeing this progress and hopefully getting this into our planning schemes so we can have those controls and better protect our green wedge.
Thank you, Councillor Ramcharan. Councillor Stockman, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say, since being on council, you hear from a lot of people, and this particular incident here or what pertains to this incident in Yarrambat, North Oatlands Road, really big issue of something happening there. So I'd just like to have protections in there. I have been alerted to by somebody in the audience saying, just with the summary, it does say here, green wedge zone and rural conservation zone, but certainly like to sort of look at low density residential areas as well, which North Oatlands Road, I believe that's what it's zoned. So it's an issue, obviously a big issue, and there was a very big uproar in Yarrambat.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. Any other councillors like to speak at this stage? Yes, Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair. We have heard a lot about dumping in the green wedge, and it's been very emotional for many of our residents. They've contacted us, and what I'd like to say about this amendment is that council needs to take a strong moral position in protecting our green wedge. I agree with that, and that's what I've heard from residents. Council needs to enforce existing planning scheme protections to prevent and to manage dumping on the green wedge, and I agree with that and agree with the residents who've put that forward to me. And council shouldn't be deferring this protection, and so this is a good amendment. Hearing from Doug then, the importation of construction site fuel and subsoils doesn't help with agriculture. He's just told us that it's harmful, and so it's harmful to the land and it's harmful to the waterways that it goes into. So, I agree with what the officers have said in their report to us, and I support it when they're saying that the amendment will provide the basis for addressing the potential environmental and amenity and landscape impacts of earthworks and the importation of fuel within the Green Wedge. And then they've also added this extra strength, which is the approval of this amendment would provide council's ability to manage the impacts of illegal clean fuel dumping on the Green Wedge through the Nillumbik planning scheme. So I think this is a really important thing that we're doing tonight, and I'm glad that it will give some peace to some of the people who've expressed such emotion over the way that they've been impacted, particularly last year with Chapel Lane.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. I'm looking for any other councillors that wish to speak. Yes, Councillor Egan.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Yes, I'd just like to just clarify a comment that Councillor Duffy just made, in that she didn't think soil import was necessary on agricultural properties, and that is wrong, because just specifically for dam restoration, dam repairs, you have to have soil, and the people that repair most of our dams out in the ag area actually know what soil is required for that, and it's usually clay-based soil. So it's quite specific, but they actually have the skills to say whether the fill that they're importing is adequate for the job, and that's why we actually have the 100 cubic metre limit, because that's a pretty good amount, I suppose, to fill a normal average dam or repair a dam wall in Nillumbik. So I just wanted to stress that, because in some circumstances we actually do need good, clean soil that is quite prescriptive for the use for which it's required. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. No more comments from any of the councillors. In that case, I will put the motion to a vote. All in favour? And I think the motion is carried unanimously. We'll move on to supplementary and urgent business, of which we have none, and also confidential reports, of which we have none, and that concludes our meeting tonight. A special thank you to Vince and Jeremy for putting the electronics together, and particularly Eddie and Nick, who reset the entire internet, I think, in the last half hour. Thank you, everyone, and I officially close the meeting at 7:38 p.m. Thank you.